5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hello and welcome, everyone, to Truth, Beer, and Podsequences. So this is a podcast where my co-host and I listen to and watch all the Cincinnati-based craft beer media from the previous week. We get together at a podcast host, and today we are back at Higher Gravity Summit Park. Thank you, Higher Gravity, for being a gracious podcast host. Now, hopefully there aren't too many consequences from the hosts of the other craft beer podcasts and media so far this far into 2024. We're doing all right. Julia, what does it look like in 2025?
As I see into the future, things are still looking pretty good. There are going to be a couple little bumps. Coming in the next 2 months, it looks like. But other than that, neither of us should be we shouldn't have any concern about things.
Well, my name is Marco, and I am a taproom manager here locally. Also brewed beer for several years. And that voice you heard, I did say her name. It is Julia, and she is the best co-host in Podcastlandia.
As Marco said, I am Julia, and I'm seeing a little gnat flying above my face. So, I mean, if I'm a little distracted this episode, you'll know why. And I have a slight call to action for everyone. Should you participate in any Pride activities, that type of thing, please do not buy the joke of an MLS, I'm using air quotes here, Pride kit from them. Instead, use the money that you would have spent on that MLS training kit and donate it to a local Pride or LGBTQ plus organization that you love and that you want to support. Your money will do so much more good that way than going to the MLS.
Okay. For this cause.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For this
Yes.
particular cause.
Yes.
Well said, Julia.
You're still working on the intro, and I'm going off on all kinds of stuff.
No, that's okay. So thank you for everybody who listened for a long time. Truly appreciate it. So thank you for everyone who's newly aboard. You'll get it, I promise. And when you do, hopefully you go back and tell your friends and your family and listen to a few more episodes. But no craft beer podcast would be a good craft beer podcast. And we are the #1 craft beer podcast that talks about Cincinnati craft beer podcasts and media. Wouldn't be a good podcast if we weren't having something to drink. And we use that term in the widest variety sense. Not sense, but of. We could be having all the way anything.
Yeah.
Water, coffee, non-alcoholic. We have beer, seltzers, cocktails. So today, though, we are drinking craft beer. What did you drinking, Julia?
From Grainworks Bavarian Princess, their Hefeweizen. It just sounded nice and kind of light and crisp for the heat out there. A good prep for kolsch night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight's kolsch night.
Yes. So today, whatever. I don't know. Words aren't working for me today. If this episode seems a little rushed, it's because it is.
It is. Yeah, we're not. It is rushed.
All right, Marco, how about you?
Rodhouse Bills.
Excellent.
Yeah. All the thoughts and opinions on this podcast are ours and ours alone. They do not reflect any entity which we may be affiliated with, such as full-time jobs and part-time jobs and Higher Gravity or Fretboard or wherever we may happen to be recording.
They don't know
Northern
what we're
Row, whatever. So if you want to get at us, we'll tell you how at the end of the pod, and I'm sure you can figure it out, but we're going to tell you anyway.
Yes.
That being said, Julia, what did you watch? What did you listen to?
We have a whole bunch of stuff. We have kind of two things that'll be quicker mentioned, so we'll probably start with those after I make sure that we've both listened to and watched the same stuff.
Okay.
There was an episode of Beers and Beards that came out.
Okay.
So got that one. There's a new podcast that's going to be coming out that isn't always really going to fit our wheelhouse, but it is local, so we definitely want to shout it out. Uncommon Spirits.
Uncommonwealth.
Uncommonwealth Spirits. I left a word off of that. I have it written down right, but
it's
like
all
I said,
one word.
Words aren't working for me today.
Uncommonwealth.
Oh my God, I don't know what's happening. Uncommonwealth Spirits, a podcast by Cincinnati Distilling.
Yes.
All right, we have two episodes of The Weekly Pint.
2.
Because we, because, we recorded on Monday last week, so we didn't have that episode available to us. We have an episode of the Brewery Explorers podcast.
Yes.
And we have Brew Skies Booze News Barstool Perspective.
I think that's it.
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and just jump right into this. As I said, let's start with the two that aren't going to be very long recaps, just to kind of kick things off in a reasonable pace. Beers and Beards, episode 153, Fretboard and Brink's Electric Llama IPA. They only mentioned this for about 2 or 3 minutes at the 26-ish minute mark. And they kind of said, are people trying to make up new beer styles? Because Electric Llama is a Bavarian IPA, which when we were at Fretboard last week, it was explained why it's a Bavarian IPA. So listen to this episode to hear how David talks about and explains that, or just get up to Fretboard and get one and talk to the bartenders and learn about it by being in the place where it's created, or go to Brink or Fretboard. I'm sure they'll tell you all about it.
It's fine. I mean, with the variety they have on the board, I'm sure that a lot of people are going to drink a lot of it. And, It's cool to do a collaboration.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. They didn't talk too much about the collaboration. It was more just here are my tasting notes. This is what I thought about the beer, and the rest of the episode was mostly focused on bourbons and country music. So if you're into those things, definitely give this episode of Beers and Beards a listen. Moving on to Uncommon Wealth Spirits. This is really cool. Episode 1 just came out a day or two ago. I think it finally hit Apple Podcasts today. I know that there were a couple issues with getting that to work. So if you don't see it on your podcatcher, either search for it or just give it another few days, and you should see it everywhere.
Right.
This episode 1 was just Welcome to Uncommon Wealth Spirits. Is it Dave Lamb?
Yeah.
Dave Lamb and one of our good friends, Josh Angle.
Yep.
They're going to be talking about spirits that are mostly not from Kentucky, mostly not from the Commonwealth. They're going to talk a little bit about, from what the intro said, about maybe some trends, some news involving spirits. They might have some on-the-road shows, and most of the shows they're probably going to be sampling a bourbon, a whiskey, a spirit of some sort from somewhere that is not the great state of Kentucky.
I think I'm also supposed to say that I work for that company, that family of brands. Mm-hmm. So I'll make sure that, although I'm not going to stay quiet on commentary, if we get to an episode or release that we're going to discuss, into any depth, I'm gonna say what I think and. What I think is pertinent and would add to the conversation, kind of unlike the rest of the stuff we do.
Sure.
But I'll make sure to keep it all very straight and narrow, very above board. So
Sounds
just know
fair.
that that's going to be the case for me.
That's fair, and that's I appreciate you being transparent on that. I don't know how many episodes will really fit into our wheelhouse. I'm going to listen just because it sounds like it's going to be a really cool listen.
Yeah.
It just might not pop up on our show as something we recap each and every episode.
Yeah, so the stretch is recorded at the distillery, which is part of a family of brands that has breweries. Mm-hmm. So although it's a short winding road, it's still a slight of a winding road for us to talk about it being craft beer based.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to our kind of full recaps, our full slightly rushed recaps. Do you want to start with stock?
Yeah.
I swear to God, I don't know what is happening to me today.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with Brewery Explorers, one of the weekly Pints, Cincy Brewcast, or Brew Skies Booze News?
Let's stalk the Brewery Explorers.
All right, let's stalk them first. This is Season 2, Episode 8, Life is a Circus, Have a Beer with Paul Miller of Bircus Brewing Company. It was about a 34-minute episode, not too long, so anyone can either watch this on YouTube or listen on your podcatcher. We encourage you to do one of the two. If you watch on YouTube, you get a little bit of...
you get a show.
You get a show, yes.
What
yes,
happened?
Excellently
a burlesque
put.
show.
Paul, yes. I mean, there were some feathers, there were some boas. It was...
And then there's Paul.
It was pretty crazy. Very entertaining. Paul ensured proper pronunciation of Bircus very early on in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, no. It's not pronounced this way. It's pronounced that way, even though we might not correct you all the time.
Right.
So say it how you want to say it and see what your bartender does when you go down to visit. Mm-hmm. Yes. The best way to find your significant other is to drop out of college and join the circus.
Yeah.
Which is what I have always said.
General, yeah.
And then the clown just kind of
advice.
scared me away. So I'm like, I guess I'm not finding my significant other. And then I met Josh. And it's been amazing from there.
That's it.
Paul is an experienced learner, which I thought was such a phenomenal term because he has had to do absolutely everything. This needs to be done. I don't know how to do it. Fuck it, let's figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And that was pretty awesome.
It's the way he makes his way. And then eventually, local government bodies or federal government bodies let him know that that may or may not be the right way to do it. And then he just finds a way to go through.
Right, like the time he was threatened by the KGB for his private parties.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and that's actually not something we're making up. That was actually something in the episode. So if that doesn't convince you that you need to watch or listen.
Or was it?
Ooh. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Find out how Ross Perot and a horse end up in the podcast.
So Bircus and Paul, it is literally a circus. Like it is literally trying to explain like a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Like it's this show is wild. The shows that Paul has done with the Gnarly Gnome for Cincy Brewcast have been absolutely wild. The brief time that I met him when I went down to Bircus for wrestling was wild. Like we're talking, oh yeah, I'm the chief goof officer, and love the title, by the way. And all of a sudden he's pulling out a keg and balancing it on his chin. Like this guy is, he is the real deal though. Like, yes, he jokes around and he's always trying to kind of almost be at an 11, but you can tell he is absolutely a genuine guy. They talked a little about the history of Bircus. They were one of the first breweries to be funded. I swear, Marco,
we're going to get through it.
We're going to get through it. I'm trying. The Big Blue expansion.
Yeah.
Listen to find out what that is. It may or may not involve a circus tent.
Also, there may or may not involve Africa.
As long as you bless the rains before you go.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. What else do I have here? Paul puts together the most incredible ribbon cutting ceremonies in the city. Right? Right?
It's amazing.
It is absolutely fantastic. Again, 34-minute episodes, so I think if we keep talking about it, we're just going to tell you the whole episode, which isn't our goal here. Our goal is to cause you to have an interest in listening or watching, and for you to go do that and to support the Brewery Explorers. So that's what we're telling you to do right now. If this interests you, check out this episode and then check out all their other episodes.
Do you like fun? Do you appreciate when you can say, "Oh, that was fun. I enjoyed that." If you're one of those people, go and watch.
If you're listening to our show, you're absolutely one of those people. So
I would think so.
So go watch or listen. I would encourage you again to watch because, as Marco said, the burlesque is beautiful. But if that's not your thing, well, then just listen.
Just listen.
And it's fine. Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah. What do you want to move on to next? Again, this is going to be a little rush because we have places to be and kolsch to drink. So weekly pint, Cincy Brewcast, or Brew Skies Barstool.
I want to do weekly pint, but I want to do last night's weekly pint.
Oh, so we're doing last night's first, and then we'll go back to the previous weeks?
Okay. Or maybe we won't. I don't know.
All right. We'll see. So this was episode, I think, 214. I messed up my numbering at some point, and this is a new notebook number 5 for the show.
Number 5.
The weekly point.
It's fine. It's okay. Wait, he said he only wanted to talk about one topic, and then everybody else spit out like 4 more topics.
Well, but then he also went on his own rabbit holes near the end.
Yes.
Actually, we'll talk about this. He had another Watchers Make His Cocktail.
Yeah, that was good.
As we're recording this last night's episode on May 20th, 2024. It was the most amazing crafted cocktail that he's ever had, and we were pretty sure that by the end of the show, he had given himself diabetes from this thing.
Wilford Brimley.
Diabetes. How old were those sugar cubes? Like, those things look like they were ancient, older than Joe.
Well, you can keep them around. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
It's okay?
I don't know.
It's in an airtight container.
Was that container airtight, though?
I mean, supposed to be.
It looked like something he probably found at like his parents' house or his in-laws' house during one of the camping trips that's been in the family for generations.
Maybe.
And they gave it to him, and he brought it back, and they're like, "What do we do with this?" I don't know.
He bought it in
sugar
a
cubes
estate sale.
Right. So even if it may have at one time been airtight with like the little rubber gasket around, I don't know. The way those sugar cubes looked, I have my doubts. I told him you had to put a sugar cube in. Yeah. This is also the first show where we got to pick his stirring implement.
Yes.
Which
I'm glad he picked what he picked. There are other options.
There were yes. I'm just glad that he didn't clean that stirring implement in like the normal way that you clean something after you stir something with it. That could have ended incredibly poorly. So there was a bit of talk about Oakley Beer Fest 2.
Yeah.
50 West's involvement or non-involvement and how they are or are not associated with Robert James Distilling and all that. I feel like that was kind of something that Gnome was going, I'm not sure how to talk about this, but okay, well, I'll just throw out a couple things that I think I understand about the situation. We're definitely going to need a deep dive into that on an episode of either Drinking with the Gnome or Cincy Brewcast, something like that at some point, because, again, I have questions now, and they were not answered during the weekly pint.
No.
Talked about the one thing that he wanted to talk about, we finally got to, and that was this week's episode of Cincy Brewcast with Humble Monk, and Humble Monk's move and kind of parallels between the kind of forced move that Humble Monk is having to do and COVID, and how they keep their beer in people's hands, or how they will be, trying to keep their beer in people's hands during this move and this transition. And I don't know, Mike and Alicia are absolutely amazing, wonderful people. So I think that there is enough community support that wherever they go to, people are going to follow them. Hopefully they're able to stay somewhere north side. I know that that's what they would love to do, is stay in the community.
Yeah.
But a lot of that, something that Gnome said last night, the cost of living in north side or of owning or being in any space there is just exorbitant compared to when they first opened. So it sounds like they have some positive prospects on the horizon, but keep an eye on all their social media pages and everything. And if you see their beer out somewhere, frickin' buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There might not be a weekly pint next week because of Memorial Day weekend, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, that's right, Memorial Day weekend.
Yep. He's going to be camping in glamping, more like it.
Yeah.
Backyard. Yes. Gnome talked a bit about his cocktail recipe Rolodex.
Yeah.
So that should be fun to maybe he'll break that out one day and be like, look at the Rolodex of cocktails that
we can let him borrow the wheel. He could put them on the wheel.
Yes, that would be fun. And then he could just spin the wheel to figure the next cocktail.
Yep.
All right. The new shelf is built, and we'll talk about this when we talk about last week's episode. We still don't know if it's level, though. He's like, it's built. It's there. But when you set something on it, is it just going to, tip over or roll off?
Hey, take a beer can.
Yes. Set it on there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
See what happens.
See where it goes.
Sideways.
Gave some updates on his studio and basement changes.
Yeah.
And new products coming soon-ish. And you want to be a Patreon Gnomie if you are not already.
I just want to know what he's going to do with those Chuck E. Cheese animatronics after his kids grow up a little bit.
He's probably going to keep them around. He's just going to keep them on that stage in his
them
basement.
On the stage.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Creepy. Those are all the notes that I had for this episode. I did have a count. I combined a sip count and a sneeze count.
Okay.
Yes, because why the hell not?
Why not?
He took 10 sips of his cocktail, which is
that's good.
On the high side.
That's on the high side.
For his sip count.
For a weekly pint.
And he sneezed twice.
Yeah.
There were no unintentional emoticons that floated around the screen this week, so that's why I added the sneezes.
That's an outlier.
I know, I'm telling you. That's a total of 12 countables.
Okay.
Which by our drinking game, that's 24 ounces of your favorite beverage, 1.5 pints during this hour-ish long episode of The Weekly Pint. Or, you know what, I'm going to go and do it. The Weekly Point.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
Mispronounce names of podcasts. We do cheers and drink.
We cheers and we drink.
You should too.
Why not?
Why not?
Yes. All right, moving on. Do we want to do Brew Skies Booze News, Cincy Brewcast, or last week's The Weekly Point? So you said Cincy Brewcast?
Yeah.
All right, this is Volume 10, Episode 8. Humble Monk has to go somewhere else.
Okay.
So this, combined with last night's Weekly Pint, It was, I feel like overall, the podcast had a very positive outlook feel to it.
I felt that way.
Yeah. Mike and Alicia are the co-owners of Humble Monk. I've said this a million times. They're absolutely wonderful people. When Josh and I stopped in there this past weekend, first thing Alicia did when she saw, she was like, did you hear the news? Did you see our post? Like, she wanted to make sure immediately that people that come in kind of know what's going on. Like, they're being very transparent about things. The last show that Gnome did at Humble Monk was January of 2020, right before COVID. So Volume 5, Episode 44. I remember stopping into Humble Monk multiple times during that period to buy their canned product, which, huge shout out to Urban Artifact for providing them with some cans because they weren't ready for that yet. Mm-hmm. Talking about the move, they're hoping to have some good news in a few weeks. Have a couple of positive sounding potential
irons
locations. Irons in the fire. We all know that things can change at a moment's notice, but hopefully they'll have some good news soon, and it'll check all of their boxes. Gnome asked what is on their new location wish list, which I thought was a really cool question. It's something that not a lot of breweries either get to or are kind of forced into think about. Like, okay, if we do this again, which is what Humble Monk's doing, they're kind of being forced to basically reopen their tap room a second time,
right,
on a timetable that is not within their control at all. So it's kind of like, now that you know what you know about this location here, what do you have to have at wherever your new space is? Parking was a big one. Walkability was another one. And a couple other things that I don't think that I would have thought of. But
champagne glass hot tub.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you want to drink a nice Belgian quad in the middle of a tap room in a champagne flue hot tub? Mm-hmm. They will be open for Missing Link Fest, which is June 1st, so they are still going to be participating in that. June 22nd is when they need to be, I guess, when the doors of the current location will close, and we'll see if they're able to open their new location shortly after that, or if there's going to be a longer transitionary period. All that is still kind of in the great unknown. And I only had 2 other notes about this.
They're going to contract brew.
They are going to, okay, so 3 notes, but I'll let you kind of talk about that because I've been sort of ruling this when I apologize.
No, they just mentioned that that there's a contract brew probability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a sure thing yet, but to try to be able to keep making their beer.
Right.
So fingers crossed for that. That way they don't. Again, it all depends on how they're going to be able to distribute that or get that into people's hands in that transitionary period.
Hopefully it's a win-win. Hopefully there's some place that has available space. You can keep people working, keep people, making beer, making their beer, and so they can get their beer out to places. And so. Yeah.
Apparently, I learned this from Mike. You are allowed to call babies ugly.
No, you can.
Yeah, you can. Well, you can. But it's nice to hear other people kind of confirming that it's okay to do so. Mm-hmm. So if you want to call a baby ugly, go ahead and call a baby ugly. And this is a question to Gnome. How did Mrs. Gnome react to finding a bourbon barrel in the back of the van?
He didn't cover it.
It was brought up on the Weekly Pint what his plans to do with it are, but we never heard. So maybe she doesn't know yet. That's a possibility. He may have rolled it out and into the backyard behind the mountain of shrubbery that they had to cut down. She
into
might
the
not
basement.
know yet.
She didn't even know.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible. There's enough stuff down there. She might not notice for quite a while. Did you have any other notes on this episode of the Cincinnati?
Cheers.
Cheers before our beers are empty.
Nope.
All right. Well, we have last week's The Weekly Pint, and we have Brew Skies Booze News.
Let's go Weekly Pint.
All right, Weekly Pint. This is a very Gnome-centric episode, which kind of makes sense for why we're rushing through this, because no one wants to talk about Gnome this much.
It's a lot.
This was the episode that aired May 13th of 2024, titled simply Boilermaker, ? A.K.A. Kicking It Off with Chaos.
Nice.
Yes. We got an unintentional sneak peek of what's behind Gnome at the start of this episode of The Weekly Pint. He kind of started things up and then went, oh, God, I wasn't supposed to show you that. I'm not ready for this. Because as we've mentioned, there are plans for him to change the studio, change the the area that he is doing the weekly Pint streaming and recording stuff from. New branding and layout is coming to the weekly Pint. Changes to how things show up when callers call in, which we got a sneak peek of when you called in.
Oh, yeah.
He touched on a few of those in the most recent weekly Pint, but it was, I wasn't going to really release this yet, but Marco's calling in. I'm going to show this nice professional-looking image, so I'm kind of curious what he's going to do when someone that he doesn't have, like, a stalker image of out there. We'll just have to wait and see.
Everyone's got one.
This is true.
Just got to dig around.
Most of the people that call in, too, I think Gnome probably has some picture of for either blackmail reasons or, because he's done work for them or what have you.
Right.
So no one is safe. If you call into the weekly Pint, know that your image will be on the internet.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. In this episode, Gnome made 3 beer cocktails and explained what a Boilermaker is and what it kind of isn't. Because I said that per the definition he gave, shouldn't a sleigh-bomb, which is a hot chocolate stout with a shot of peppermint schnapps, wouldn't that technically be a Boilermaker? And he's like, no, well, maybe, well, kind of. So basically a Boilermaker is just whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Find out why Thunderlull made an appearance.
Thunderlull.
In this episode, yes. He did pick a favorite out of the 3 beer cocktails that he made. And
But they're like his kids. How could he do that?
Because one of them, he said, you absolutely should not ever do this.
So he called his kid ugly.
Yes, he called the baby ugly.
Yes.
Because you're allowed to do that.
Yes.
Especially when you are a parent. He referenced the episode of Drinking with the Gnome from January 3rd, 2023, when Thunderlull first made an appearance. I couldn't find that video on YouTube. I can only find the audio-only episode. Not sure what happened there, but it looks like most of the Drinking with the Gnome episodes on that specific YouTube channel were re-uploaded because they all had like the same date on them. So not sure what happened there. It's a good listen, so if you want to hear about peppermint schnapps and Thunderlull, check out that episode on the YouTubes or on your podcatcher of choice. Otherwise, just know that Thunderlull is lol-tastic.
Lol.
Yeah. Let's see. We had Just a Fan call in, which we kind of already touched on. That was great. It's like, hey, who's this? Oh, I'm just a fan. It's Marco, isn't it? Yeah, it's me. Which was wonderful. You guys talked about the episode of the Cincy Brewcast that just came out with Gnome and Jim and the Harrison Fretboard location,
right,
and how Gnome did not introduce Jim, and it was all a whole big controversy and chaos, and people were mad and upset that how can you not introduce your guest? And
it's pretty easy to do.
It's very easy to do, especially when the conversation just happens so easily as it does with the two of them.
Oh yeah.
It was confirmed that neither Gnome nor myself can walk and drink at the same time. I can do it with like a bottle of water. Like if it's like just I don't have an issue, but if it's like a cup, there's more on my hand than there is in the glass by the time we go around the Summit Park loop, and it's terrible. Gnome needs a rolling cocktail cart for his studio, so that way he can just like roll in the things that he wants to showcase behind him. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't need to change up everything. He just needs to have a way to bring it in and then bring it out. Maybe put some wheels on that bourbon barrel of his and turn that into a rolling cocktail cart.
Little cocktail cart.
Yeah. Let's see. He did some talking about show prep and how much time it takes for an episode of Cincy Brewcast versus something like Drinking with the Gnome. He's planning on doing absolutely everything he can wrong with Drinking with the Gnome when he brings that back. And speaking of back, Cincy Beer Week is coming back. So you should start hearing more about that in July. And I think that's going to be fantastic. And the last note that I had on this is, how crooked did the shelf end up? I need to know. Maybe I'll ask him a kolsch night.
Okay. I'll
probably forget by then, but my intentions are good.
Okay.
All right.
We can ask him.
Do you have anything else before the sip count?
No. Nope.
All
I'm
right.
not going to stretch these things out.
All right, cool. We are doing great. This was another 10 sip episode.
Oh, nice.
Nice. So 20 ounces, 1.25 pints. I'll tell you, when he does cocktails, he does a lot more
Takes a lot more drinking.
than when he just cracks open a beer. So, Gnome, if you want to keep
'Cause they're sweeter.
Yes. And when you have the diabetes, you just need to keep that sweetness.
The beatus.
Up. Exactly. So we're rolling right into Brew Skies Booze News.
Yep.
All right, let's do this. This is episode from May 20th, 2024. Is being California sober better for your health? It was a fancy new remote, I don't want to call it a setup, but like the border and the layout for the YouTube video with, Brew Skies on the top and Barstool Perspective on the bottom, which I'm still waiting for them to get sued over that. But so far, so good.
If it didn't have live images in the middle of the boxes, it would be a graphic.
Yes.
But they're,
their faces were
live,
prominently
like
displayed there.
Recorded live faces.
Brett was looking very sun-touched, sun-kissed, and glowing as he is on vacation, but
Relax.
still had enough dedication to this show to call in remotely to ensure that they still got an episode out. So kudos to them for that. Let's see. They talked about ale yeast found in killer bee guts.
Yeah.
Would you drink a beer that was made from yeast that came from killer bee stomachs?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I tried.
Yeah.
Might not be good, but I'll try anything once. Speaking of health and things that may or may not kill you, bathing in beer for your health. Would you ever bathe in beer if you thought it had health benefits? Or just to say you did? Again, would you try it once?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, me too.
Yeah, like Jim Cook did on TV.
Exactly.
With your buddies.
With the another sober you up product may be coming.
Yeah.
And this one, according to them, sounds like it may actually have potential to be semi-legit, but not quite. But I think they said that about Safety Shot as well. Like, this sounds like it could have benefits, but apparently this product is going to work in a completely different way. So, I mean, again, take all of your sober up tips from Brett and Mike because they know what they're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not financial advice.
No. Although we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Beethoven went deaf because he ate fish. Something that I was not aware
And
of. But
wine.
it makes perfect sense. The fish part was the more fun of the two.
Yeah.
Because I know people say you can drink yourself blind. But have you ever heard he made himself deaf by eating fish?
Right.
Yeah. I mean...
No.
Yeah, no.
No, but worrying about people's mercury levels from eating fish, depending on how much they eat, is
true.
a concern.
Absolutely. The Financial News Corner, real estate taxes is what they talked about.
Not in favor of it?
No, I don't think the real estate should be... Bigger conversation, there are caveats and all that other kind of stuff. But if you want to know about real estate taxes, this is the episode for you.
Takes you through it.
They had a lot of thoughts and a lot of printed advice about it. Again, don't take your financial advice from Brett or Mike or us.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
The Cannabis Corner. No weed in Louisiana, and could that bleed over into other states?
It absolutely could.
It could, yeah.
I think it's an interesting take that Brett had on it.
Agreed, yes.
It's for a state that has a city with an enormous reputation for tourism and, the fun of adult excess in many ways. For them to take this course of action is intriguing. But I think that other states are going to follow along. Yeah,
I do think that it also will either impact, or it might be the other way around. The recent change from weed no longer being a Schedule 1 narcotic to a Schedule 3, to where research can actually be done on it, may also change the way that laws are looked at and handled and amended or proposed, that type of thing. Once people know really what's going on with it, because again, no one's been able to study this because of government regulations. Now that that's opened up, more educated decisions can be made. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Nope.
Yep. Last note that I had, buy their book.
Yes.
Buy their book, Missing Link, linck.com. That way you are not putting money in anyone's pockets other than theirs, and probably their publisher gets a little cut of it.
I'd imagine.
They may or may not sign your book with what you ask them to sign it with. I will put that that in there. And yes, I am speaking from personal experience, but no, it is a phenomenal book.
Phenomenal.
It's their interviews, but it reads. If you've watched any of their episodes, you're reading it in their voices. I mean, it is just absolutely fantastic. I can read and just kind of in my head hear the way they're emoting the conversations, the sentences, and I can hear, the laughter and just the exclamations of some parts of some of these stories. It's wonderful. Absolutely, you should buy it and support them. And, maybe get a butt print or two at Missing Link Fest if you see them there. Bring your book, and you already got one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got the first
I recommend it.
butt printed copy of Tanked in Cincinnati.
I'm in favor of it.
Awesome. All right. Sip count?
Yes.
And then we'll wrap things up. All right. Mike took a total of 11 sips.
Okay, very good.
Brett took a total of 0 sips. That's a first.
Wow, no hydration for Brett.
No hydration, no water, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So 11 sips, that's a total of 22 ounces for our drinking game, which is 1.37 pints in this 28-minute episode.
Okay.
That's fine.
Sounds like it'll leave you thirsty, but that's fine.
Yes. You know what? It's all good. It's all good. Well, that's really all that we have. We still managed to get just under a 45-minute episode in, so you're still getting content, even though, I did feel like this was a bit rushed. And again, Patreon, if I don't manage to if I only cut like 2 or 3 minutes out of this, I'll still upload it for you guys, but know that you may be getting the exact same thing as everyone else just a day early, because that is one of the perks of being a Patreon subscriber. Marco, any other notes before we wrap up and go to Kolsch Night?
Kolsch Night. No.
All right. If you like what we did tonight, don't tell us. Well, I don't know. You can tell us. We kind of like hearing that every now and then. Tell everyone. Tell the world. Go to truthbeerpod.com and find our email address, our social media links, the link to how to become a Patreon subscriber and get unedited episodes of what we put out. We're the only thing that I edit out, so I guess mostly unedited.
Mostly.
Are the silences when we take breaks to get a beer or to, use the bathroom or to take a Dora walk and I forget that I had the record button held down and all that other good stuff. I cut out the silences, but everything else, every awkward pause, every time that I say something and Marco goes, no, that's not right. And I have to correct myself. You get it all. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun than just the public episode, but you'll have to subscribe. Subscribe for just a month to find out. And if you don't like it, then unsubscribe. I don't know.
Yeah.
With that being said, Marco, what are you planning on doing,
Julia?
Next Tuesday?
Doing this right here, I think.
Sounds good. I'll see you there.
Cheers.
Cheers.